Okay. So you guys will notice that in this, in our method arguments, we have created an argument to pass in the parameters. So instead of specifying them in the method itself, what we'll do is we'll iterate over our map parameters and create name value pairs based out of that, or name value pair objects based upon what we have here. So what we'll do is we will say we'll first create an iterator. Nope, go back. Import class, job utility iterator equals parameters dot entry set dot iterator. So what we do is we just get an iterator for the entry set of our parameters map. And obviously map is the interface, so this could be a hash map, this could be, let's assume it's a hash map for the sake of the argument. And we'll say while iterator has next, we will say, so we've already created our array list of parameters. So we will say params.add new basic name value pair. But above that, we need to say map. So we'll say map.entry pair equal to map.entry. And so basically what we're doing is we're converting this to a key value pair, like a map entry object, by calling iterator.next and passing that to a map entry object. So now we'll say params.add, get rid of the white space, and then just pair.getKey, pair.getValue. What don't we like here? Cannot be supplemented. What? Did I miss a run here? Add new basic name value pair. Okay, what am I doing wrong here? What? Yeah, but it should just return as a string as it is. Whatever, it makes it happy. Okay. I guess that makes sense because the map itself can take an object, so we can pass in like ints or lists or whatever the hell you want to pass in, right? So the map being the interface to just say pass in an object. Well, an object can be anything. So anyway, so we iterate over our map, we get key values and add them to our parameters. So once we've built our parameters from our method argument, what we're going to do, whoops, I can type today. What we're going to do is we're going to say http post.set entity new URL encoded form entity post parameters UTF-8. And actually, that was just params. HTTP post. Okay, so all of that is what we would need to do set some headers on HTTP post request, add some parameters to the post request. So you could think our headers are coming in first, and then behind that is our parameters. And our parameters is like the contents of the form that we're submitting, right? So when you hit submit on a form, we're basically we can send a post request and pass in the name value pair of that form in as our result set. Not as our result set, but in as our form data or our post parameters. So now the question is, well, how do we test to make sure this is working right? Fairly easily. So what we can do is we can actually set up a very simple Flask API endpoint in PyCharm. So start dealing with a little bit of Python, and basically what we can do is we can write a unit test, pass in, well, first we'll create our Flask API endpoint to run on localhost. Do a unit test to test the send post request, and then make sure that everything coming back is right. So let's come in here, go to my personal GitHub, and pull down the basic Flask app. Let's see, github.com. I think it was Flask demo. Nice. Okay, download. Let's see, so cd in the .cd PyCharm projects. Do ls-la. Do a clone. And then a PyCharm we will open. Probably this one right here. This has Flask, right? This doesn't have Flask. Huh. Let's see what this guy's got. This should have Flask, right? No. Okay, so let's see what that chokes on. Flask demo.py. Pip install Flask. Sudo pip install Flask. Okay, so if we run our son of a bitch, pip install SQL alchemy. Stupid. I'll get into all this in November. What I'm doing here. Most of you guys have played with Python before, right? Have some idea. So you've seen pip, you've seen dependency management with Python. This actually would have been a lot easier if I had a requirements.txt, because then I could just create a virtual environment, pull all my requirements down, and be done with it. When I created this demo, I wasn't thinking ahead, so now we're running. So what I'll do is I'll go to my local host and I'll go to 127.0.0.1 on port 5000 and plug in /test. So I'm able to hit my test API endpoint, right? But now what I want to do is I want to create a new one that will allow me to pass in parameters. So we'll say /test /name / let's say make, keep the car theme, model, say make model print okay. So we've created a Flask blueprint. Son of a bitch. Let's do this. All right. So now I've created a new Flask route, basically. If I go back to my browser and I plug that in, and I say forward F100, it's printed. So I grab my values. So I've gotten my parameters that I passed in. Super simple, right? So now we have to specify, we need to do some slight tweaks to in order to actually be able to get our post data, right? And so we should be able to say request. So the first thing that we want to do, we'll change this to something easier. We'll call it cars, make model. In fact, we can even just do that. So that's doing it with get. But if we're going to do it with post, what we want to do is at the top, we're going to import this Flask request. I'll create a string. And we'll say for k v in request dot args print. And we'll say print. Let's see what that did over there. Okay. So there is that. We will reload this. So now what we need to do is we need to write our unit test for our network HTTP, right? So we're going to come in here, right click, hit create test, put it in the testing package. And in post request 1, well, first we'll do this. We'll say I HTTP equals and push request will say map string and hash map string we'll say URI equals HTTP localhost on port 5000/cars. And we'll say network HTTP send post request URI params. So now we've written our unit test. So what we can do is we can debug and make sure that at least this part of the unit test is succeeding, right? So all we're really going to do is make sure that in our other app we are getting data, right? Or that our other app is receiving the data. And we'll improve this here in just a second, but for right now, okay, so that's weird. Didn't iterate over my params. What the crap? Renders entry set. It's not specified. Ah, yeah, okay, that's what HTTP. Method not allowed. Okay, so equals post. Let's run it again. Okay, so our unit test passed, which means we got a response back from our Flask API. But you'll see in our Flask API, we didn't output any of the parameters, right? But I may have also done that wrong. So let's see here. It's API key. I can make that more too. Okay, so I created a map, but I didn't add any values to it. So we'll say map, we'll say params dot put make forward params dot put model 100 params dot put year 1965. So now if we run our unit test again, they're still going to pass. And if we go back here if we go back to our Flask demo, you can see that nothing is still printed. So now we need to debug the Flask demo real quick to make sure, to figure out what I'm doing wrong here in order to get our data. Okay, so that's debugging, and that's running. So it's calling that. So let's see, request.oros. Okay, so there's no. Okay, so that's what we're doing. Again. Alright, so now everything should work. Okay, so now in our API, we've iterated over the model, make it right. So that's processing the raw post data like we've submitted before. Now, what about the headers? How do we make sure that the headers were sent in correctly? I believe, if I remember correctly, we should be able to say for k b in request.headers iter items. Same thing as before, right? So we could say print some headers, print some params, and then we'll have to redeploy that. So we go back to IntelliJ. Now, what's the one thing? Let's go into network HTTP, the class. So in this demo, what's the one thing that we have done possibly incorrectly? Right? So we wrote an interface for our network HTTP class. But what's the one thing that we may have done incorrectly? So we specified that we can pass in parameters. We passed in that we can pass in a URI and we can pass in an API key. But what if our API key has to be specified in the headers and it has a different name each time, right? So say I'm hitting 3 or 4 different APIs and the header value for my API key changes every time. Didn't specify it in the interface, right? So I specified an API key. If I can, where did it go? It's just here. I specified an API key, but I didn't specify a way to pass in headers, right? So I'm going to go ahead and overload this one more time and add a way, say headers, to pass in headers. Okay, so now I have a method that allows me to just pass in parameters, right? So a basic HTTP post request, right? Nothing crazy, just a post request. But I have also overloaded it to pass in headers. And so what I'm going to do to pass in my headers is a lot easier than what I have to do to pass in my parameters. So I can say iterator, headers, iterator equals, if I can type today, equals headers dot entry set dot iterator. I can say wow headers iterator dot has next HTTP post dot put dot set header. Actually, we should do this header. So that just sets the header, but equals. Okay, no. Okay, I was wrong. I was doing it right the whole time. So same thing as before, we iterate over it, but this time we're just going to say HTTP post dot set header And then, how do we do that? Well, first we got to create a entry key, headers iterator, set header pair dot get key dot toString pair dot get value dot toString. Okay, so let's walk through this again real quick because I've kind of run through it. All right, so at the top of this method, I've created my clients, right? And I've created my clients and my return string. In the next part, I have iterated over my parameters and converted them to HTTP header. Or I can't talk today. I've iterated over my method parameter headers and converted them to HTTP headers. And in the next part, in the next part, I have iterated over my method parameters and converted to HTTP post parameters. And then here at the bottom, I have created a response handler, and I've executed my request. Right? So I built my entire post request. So now, if I go into my PyCharm, which is my basic handler, what I can do is, instead of rendering a template, what I can do is I can just return a simple string. Say true. So if I go in here and I go into my network HTTP test, I'll say string return value is equal to that, and I'll say assert return value equals ignore case true. Right? So assuming everything works correctly, what will happen is this will send off a request to my Flask API endpoint. That endpoint will print out the values in my headers and in my post parameters, return the value true back to my client, which will then send it back to my test layer or my test method, and will value the value. So I save that. I'll go ahead and bounce my Flask demo just to be safe. Stop and reload. So now I come back to my unit test and I run it. So everything passed, which means, and we can confirm it here. Wait. I see what it did. I didn't update my headers. I didn't pass in headers in my test method. But so everything else worked. And we did iterate over the headers, but these are all headers that were set by the Apache HTTP client. We didn't see the headers that we set using our, we didn't see any custom headers. So let's go back to our IntelliJ project, and super easy to update that. We'll say headers. And we'll say, so we update our params, but now we need to update our headers. Headers dot put x API dash key equals to say headers dot put OAuth token and then I'll pass in my headers here. Okay, so you guys can see I've changed my Java side, but I haven't changed my Python side. I don't even need to bounce my Python side. In fact, I should be able to just run the Java side, and the Python side should just print everything out. If we go here, you can see now I've got my OAuth token, which I passed in from Java, and my API key, which I also passed in from Java. So I've set my headers, I've set my parameters. Now you might be wondering, why would I ever set headers when I could just pass in parameters? Well, certain API keys only accept, certain APIs only accept certain values in headers. So more often than not, what you see, like, have you guys heard of New Relic before? So New Relic is a server and application monitoring platform. They operate off of an agent. You guys know what agents are? So an agent is just a piece of software that runs on a server, well, basically a computer. Let's say computer because your smartphone, tablet, server, cloud resource. An agent just runs there. And that agent takes information about that resource and sends it up to an external host, right? So in New Relic's case, New Relic has an agent that runs on bots. That agent then sends server data back to New Relic or application data back to New Relic. In some cases, it's got agents inside of apps and stuff. Like you can do it with Android and have it show you like how many times it's crashed, how many times the user has pulled up a view, etc. Where I was going with this though is that so New Relic, because I've worked with New Relic requires the API key, it's actually called XAPI key, to be passed in via the HTTP post headers in order to be able to pull data back about my resources. So that's why we care about using headers. Would it be a lot easier just to pass in parameters? Yeah. If we were writing an API that maybe only our application was going to use, right? So think about Android programming or iPhone programming. So let's say that I'm building an iPhone app and I want to store the data externally, right? Or I want to be able to query data down. So I build out my app, and I have stubbed in my API endpoints. But now I need to build an API for it. So I write it in Perl, I write it in Python, I write it in PHP. But when I send those post requests from my app to my API, I don't really care. I can code it up and not really care about the headers. I can do it all in parameters. But when you're writing something for the public, the headers are a lot more secure. So that's why we care about headers. Any questions about post requests, parameters, headers? No? So I would imagine with most APIs, that's what you're going to have to deal with. And really, when you get into OAuth, it's pretty simple, right? So at a certain point, you get into like passing in a token through the headers, processing a response, getting the token back out of that, and then sending your actual request to get your data. So you send a request to do an auth, get a token, and then send another request to get your data. I know Tinder worked in that with it. Yes. Yes. Right. So probably what's going to happen is you guys are going to just finish building out your Hibernate and your API stuff in Java, and then for November, your assignment for the month of November will be build me what you built in Java and Python. So, and then probably the assignment content for that will be write me a paragraph or two of what you liked about Python versus Java, what you liked about Java versus Python. Was it easier to write this in Java? Was it easier to rewrite what you did in Java and Python? Vice versa. Which is why I'm hoping for a little bit more functionality in your Java stuff than just like, oh, look, I can pull from a file that I wrote. Okay, cool. That took you 10 minutes. Awesome. That's why I'm hoping for like API calls and integrating with the database and stuff. So the final will probably be, so there'll be one more assignment, and then I'll probably have you guys finish your two, like polish your final, your Python and Java. So that'll probably be the last assignment. And that'll be due, because I think assignment 3 will be due like, when's the last day? When's the last day of the semester? Like the 16th of December or something? Is it the 8th? Oh, it is the 8th. Now, is that for exams or is that for? Oh shit. Okay, so we may have to jump into Python next week, or like the week after, because I was trying to wait until assignment 3 was done and then get into Python, but we basically missed a full week there in November for Thanksgiving, and so that really only leaves us with like 2.5 weeks to do Python, and I really want to take more time. So maybe what we'll do is like next week we'll wrap up the Java piece, so get into whatever's left, and then the week after that we'll get into. So that would, let me look at. Yeah, so like let me look at my calendar here and see what dates I'm working with here. You guys have to forgive me. This is my first semester. I'm still working out the planning phase of all this stuff. So assuming we get done with Java the 26th, which is next Thursday, we jump into Python on the 31st, and that leaves us till, let's say that gives us 3 weeks to go over all the Python content. So hypothetically, you could have a Python assignment due on the 24th. Well, that's Thanksgiving, isn't it? Sure. Let's say you got a Python assignment due on December 1st. So that next week, I know it's a short time, but since we've gone over all the content, and it's really just polishing, you have a week to polish up your Python and your Java. So from the 1st to the 8th, you'd have to polish up your 2 assignments. But hypothetically, if you've done everything according to the assignment documents, you shouldn't really have to polish it up. So that would be like your final. And we would probably have like lab time that week, so the week of the 8th. So like that Thursday or that Tuesday, I gotta see what the scheduling is gonna look like. Basically, we do like the exam time. Yeah, exam time. We would have like, because I think we're allotted like 90 minutes or 2 hours for an exam, something like that. Is it considered night class? Yeah. No, I'll need to see. But I would think this is an afternoon class. I think this is a day class. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to check with Hazem and see just kind of where we're falling. But so, does that sound like a reasonable amount of work for you guys in the next month and a half? So, okay, cool. So yeah, that should. If you guys don't have any other questions, so Thursday we'll go over the Java generics, so abstract classes, generic typing, and then go from there. So, all right, awesome. We will see you guys Thursday. You too. See you. Oh shoot, I gotta So just